Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask NT Wright Anything, the program where we try to answer your questions about Jesus, the Bible, and the life of faith. I'm Mike Bird from Ridley College in Melbourne, joined by
Tom Wright from Wycliffe Hall in Oxford.
This is from Salome Schieser from Schweiz in Switzerland. And Salome's got a great question. Did Jesus make mistakes? And she asks, humans learn best by making mistakes. As mistakes or error and sin overlap, this seems quite mysterious to me. What is meant when it says that Jesus learned obedience by suffering? Now, if I understand Salome's question right, learning requires making mistakes. Obedience means you've gone through trial and error to reach a point of obedience. Did Jesus make mistakes? And Tom, I've got a very good test case here. A very good test case. The story of the Syrophoenician woman. Mark 7, parallel version in Matthew 15 about the Canaanite woman. And where she says, look, please heal my daughter. And Jesus says, it's not right to give the food of children and throw it to the dogs. And she says, yes, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the children's table. And a lot of people interpret that as if that Syrophoenician woman enables Jesus to overcome his ethnocentrism or even his racism or his ethnic prejudice. I remember George Caird had a great understanding of this passage, but did Jesus make mistakes? Did he have to grow in knowledge? Was there anything trial and error? Did the Syrophoenician convince him to change his mind?
I'd like to know what George Caird said about the Syrophoenician woman, because not about that. What were you saying that George Caird had a passage on?
On the Syrophoenician woman, George Caird said, you've got to imagine Jesus asking this woman this question with a wry smile on his face, inviting her witty reply. And I in fact read something near identical from just last night from George Van Kooten. He's got a good little book out called Reverberations of the Good News about the Gospels, which is very interesting.
I have it on the desk somewhere here. Yeah.
It's a fun read. It's it's some places it's brilliant. Other places it's just like, oh my gosh, man, what book of the Bible are you reading? Anyway, does Jesus make mistakes, Tom?
Yeah. Well, let's go straight to that passage in Hebrews, because it's really important. Hebrews chapter 5. Verse 8, even though he was son of God, he learned obedience through the things which he suffered. Now, I was looking at that verse in the Greek, and I realized, and I'm not sure I realized this before, it's almost got a poetic feel to it.
It does.
He learned through his suffering is emathen, aphon, epathen, and then obedience, ten hupakoin. So emathen, aphon, epathen. It's almost as though that's one of these little quizzical ways of putting something. He's suffered, and so he learned, and what he learned was what obedience really means in practice. And the context is very clear. It's a reference to the episode in the Garden of Gethsemane in Matthew 26 and the parallels, because it says, in the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers to God with loud crying and tears to the one who was able to save him from death. And even though he was heard for his piety, but he had to learn what obedience meant. So it's fascinating, because in the episode which is being referred to in Matthew 26, the Gethsemane episode, Jesus says, in effect, please, isn't there another way? And the answer is no, there isn't another way. And actually, you do know that. So Jesus says, thy will be done. But that's not that he wasn't heard. He was heard, but he had to discover what obedience really meant in practice. I think that's what that passage in Hebrews is all about. And actually, you having quoted my old teacher, George Caird, I remember in his lectures on Hebrews, he says much the same thing.
It's got nothing to do with trial and error, though. There's no kind of trial and error, learning from your mistakes. It's not really what's going on.
I understand that line about we learn through our mistakes, and the answer is, well, we do and we don't. That's a bit glib sometimes. That if you're if you're learning a new language, when you make a mistake and the teacher explains to you why that's a mistake, you really do learn it then. There's all sorts of things in life which are like that. But when I learned to drive, fortunately, I didn't learn by crashing into a lot of other cars coming the other way on the motorway. I actually learned the safer way, although no doubt as a young driver I was a bit of a liability sometimes. But so that there's learning by mistakes and learning by mistakes. And I don't think Jesus, in Gethsemane, when he says, isn't there another way? And then on the cross, when he says, my God, why did you abandon me? Had God abandoned him? Generations of people preaching on that passage have said God had not abandoned him. It was just that the dark cloud of human sin and all the rest of it had come between him and God, and it felt as though he was abandoned. And so he reached for Psalm 22, which is a prayer out of that. That I think we need to be careful before simply saying, well, Jesus got it wrong. Although I do want to say that Jesus was as aware as anyone else in first century Judea that it is failed messiahs who end up on crosses. And so if you think that you're God's Messiah and you end up on a cross, well, join the club. There were lots of others who had the same fate. So I think to find himself being challenged at that deep level, to question, to doubt, is not to sin. It's not in that sense to make a mistake. It's to say, have I made a mistake? Was I barking up the wrong tree all the time? Which is a different thing, I think, from saying, no, I've just been getting it wrong. So when you go back to the Syrophoenician woman, I'm very much of a mind with George Caird there, that I think it all depends how you say it, because after all, we have several other stories in the Gospels. Think of the Samaritan woman in John 4, for instance, and Jesus says, well, give me a drink. And now, if you knew who was talking to you, you'd be asking me for a drink. So he is clearly not in a position to say, no, you're an outsider, we're not having that, anything like that. And after all, we've got the parable of the Good Samaritan and lots of other stories in the Gospels which show a very different attitude to what's there on the surface of the text in Mark 7, which is Jesus just saying, no, we don't want any of you pagans, thank you very much. So I think the question then is how you read the text, and I mean how you read it. As you say, whether you've got a smile on your face and a smile in your voice as well. That I think there's many passages where Jesus teases people and probing them, pushing them. Can you not actually penetrate the disguise, see what's going on here? And I think this may be one such. But so I would beware of simply saying we learn through our mistakes. Therefore, if Jesus learned anything, obviously it was because he made mistakes. Well, no, that's a bit too glib.
Yeah.